Yeah, great to see you, Hunter and Meg and everyone. I missed you all. So for those you don't know, I worked with Park to Fly up until I think almost 6 months ago. I can't believe how time flies. And it's such a pleasure to be here with you again.
Such a pleasure to have you back.
Yeah, and that topic is big. I mean, I cannot cover it all in 30 minutes. So I'll try to do my best and give as much tips as I can. And Hunter, if you're moderating, I'll appreciate if you can moderate the chat. If there are any questions, I'll be excited to answer them all. I love to have interactions and not just kind of do my spiel. Yes. So I welcome all of our listeners to ask any questions you have. And let me just share my screen. Hopefully you can see the slides. So hi, everyone. Nice to meet you. And as Hunter mentioned, I started working remote in 2016. And back then I was a manager, an engineering manager. And I would say that that was the turn point in my career. That picture is taken from a hotel room in New York City. And I was about to go to the headquarters of DigitalOcean in NYC and interview for an engineering manager position, which eventually I took and started at the beginning of 2016. And that changed my life. I kid you not, that changed my life. I'm a mother of 4, just on a personal note. And throughout my career, I always had to struggle with maintaining a full-time position and caring for my family. I was not present as I wanted to be in my kids' life. I commuted a lot. I always managed teams in office, occasionally working from home, but for the most part, I was working in the office. And that obviously was a sacrifice for me because I could not pick up my kids from school. I could not give them lunch. I could not help them with homework because usually I was at work and I was getting back very late. And the position before DigitalOcean, I was working about 50 miles away from home. So I commuted at least 2 hours a day. And that was tolling me. But when I was interviewed for that position, to be honest with you, I was skeptical. I thought, how can I manage a team of people that I never met before, and I don't even have the opportunity to properly meet in person? Because after, I went to 1 week to New York, and then I started managing remote. How do I do that? I was skeptical that it's even possible. But I found out not that it's only possible, but that was the preferred way of working for me. As a working mom, it allows me to do things I could never do before. And I'll kind of share kind of the highlights of things that I feel are most important when you are managing a remote or hybrid team, because nowadays, a lot of companies work hybrid. So first of all, my first tip I would say is to focus on building connections with people, not just working with people as employees. And as a manager, right? And I know that on myself, you tend to be very pragmatic. Like, okay, focus on the task, on the work, all the conversations are about what needs to be done, about the career. And you need to be more aware that when you work remote or hybrid and you don't see people in person and you don't have the opportunities to occasionally, go for coffee or lunch or do fun stuff together, to really focus on them as human beings. Be curious about their lives as much as they are willing to share. Focus on what's going on in their life. A lot of times when you go to the office and you see someone, you can notice if they have a bad day or maybe a bad period of time in their life. But when you work remote, you don't always see that. And it's really important to pay special attention to that. That picture in the background is a picture of me with some people in my team. We did an offsite in Colorado. Back then, I used to live in Colorado, and I flew over the team. And we spent time together, just spent the time as a team. And we did rafting. That picture is actually taken a minute before we all fell to the water. And I'll tell you something, that experience was so impactful on our team, not just because we fell into the water, but we really got to know each other better after that, that experience together. So if it's possible, I know it's financially, it's not cheap to fly over people, especially when you have people maybe globally, working in different countries. But if you think about investing time to bring your team together, make sure that you focus not just on work, but on building experiences with connecting with people, getting to know them, because those experiences that you do together, and we did also, other things, not just rafting, like zip lining, and we did other offsites, and I always tried to combine doing something fun with work. And the work that we did was always strategic, long-term planning, working as a team and defining what we're going to focus on next, and never the day-to-day, because the motivation was to build the connections, not just do the day-to-day work. So whenever possible, just focus on doing that when you meet face-to-face, and not just on the day-to-day work, because that's, to be honest, not the best use of your money when you're flying off the team. On top of that, when you work on a day-to-day, if you work remote or hybrid, make sure that you do one-on-ones with people. As I said, connect with them, be curious about their life. I was always insisting on having one-on-ones with my teams. And I manage people that are engineers and managers, and not always they understood why I wanted to meet with them every week. And I remember, I had some engineers that actually resisted meeting with me. And they said, why do we need to meet? I don't have any status update. And I always said, it's not about the status meeting. I want to know, how are you doing? I want to check how things are going, to hear from you, share feedback if I have to. And if we have to make this meeting 5 minutes, that's fine. But that check-in was very important for me. So I highly recommend to make sure that you check in with your people. And those team buildings that I did with my team in person, you cannot obviously go rafting with them when you are all across the globe. But there are other things that you can do. You can do some fun games or competitions or anything else that you can do online. There are a lot of platforms that you can use to connect people. Invest time in connecting people, not just meetings that are work related. For example, we used to do happy hours every Friday afternoon. I must admit, I rarely joined. I didn't always join, and I wish I joined more of those. But the team loved them, because that was an opportunity for the team to just talk about what they're going to do on the weekend, or different things, and connect as people. So make sure that you invest time in that, not just on the work. And as I mentioned, I try to kind of list some of the things that I felt can be done virtually, because I know it's hard. By the way, that picture is from the same offsite. We cooked breakfast together. So one of the things that I insisted back then was that we cook our own meals, and the cooking together also built a very deep connection. But, I wanted to give you some tips in case you cannot meet in person. So other than the obvious, right, the one-on-ones and the virtual coffees and all that, I thought about some other things that I saw in other companies that I loved. Personalized gift. So, a lot of companies send some gifts for, maybe for the holidays or something. I remember in DigitalOcean, they used to send pies before Thanksgiving, and it always seemed crazy to me, like, why would they mail a pie from New York to Colorado? But it actually meant a lot to me. It meant that the company cared for me. So even something like that, a small token like that of sending a pie can mean a lot to someone, that the company actually cares. But taking that a step further would be sending something more personalized. So identifying what is important for the specific individual and sending something that will be meaningful for them. It could be, I don't know, a book that they want to read. It could be a gift card for a restaurant that they like, or anything else that will be meaningful just for them. And it's not just about a present that they would like to receive, because you can always send an Amazon gift card and everyone will be happy, but it's showing them that you care, that you actually see them as people, that you care about them, that you know what they like and what they don't like. I mentioned before virtual team building, so try to find ways to do some fun activities virtually. The next one is really near and dear to my heart, mentorship, that I see companies doing, and it's very meaningful to building connections between people. So I've started mentoring since 2017, and that was very impactful experience for me. And I built also a mentorship program with Power to Fly. And I also help companies run internal mentoring program. And I've seen how internal programs can really help building connections within companies. It helps people not just up skills and learn from someone else, but also to get to know other people in the companies. And usually the feedback that I receive from people who participated in those internal mentorship programs is that the most impactful thing for them was that they got an opportunity to meet other people that normally they wouldn't meet, or they wouldn't have a close interaction with. And this is something that you can do very easily and help people upskill, but also to connect and meet people that they don't meet on a day-to-day. Another thing that I wanted to mention here is cross-functional projects. I was always encouraging collaborations with other teams when I worked at DigitalOcean, and even sometimes I was, when I thought it was the right decision, I was even prioritizing working with other teams more than internal things. And, you know, sometimes people in my team didn't understand why I was doing that. And the reason for that, it was not just business priorities, but also connecting people from different teams and helping them work better together towards a shared goal. So when you can and when it's appropriate, promote those kind of cross-functional. Also, you know, as a note for that, allow people to do different moves internally, lateral moves, or even moves if you run an organization. Allow people to move within projects. I always was attentive to people in my org, and when people wanted to change and maybe do something else, when it was possible, I allowed them to do so and move to a different team. It creates not just connection, you know, because they have an opportunity to meet different people, but it also helps them feel that you actually care. It creates a greater motivation, helps them connect to different people, and helps them grow. And hackathons is another thing that DigitalOcean did, and I really loved that hackathon. It was a big celebration that the entire company could participate, and it allows connection between people. There was a competition around which project is going to win. People gathered, you know, for a week and worked together on different projects with people they don't know or they don't know so well. And it was a great way to foster innovation, but also to connect people. So that kind of the highlights of different things I feel like you can do to build connections virtually that are not the obvious. And the next one is one of the most important things for me. And if there is one thing you are going to take out of my talk is this: trust is key when you work remote or hybrid. You have to trust the people you work with, and they have to trust you. It's not always easy to build trust. And I'll give you an example. I had a manager that hired me in a certain company, and that manager left. And I had to have a new manager, that I reported to. And it was really difficult for me to build the same level of relationship with him as I had with the previous manager, and to build the trust. And it took me about a year until I felt like I completely built a collaboration and trust between us. And there are several things that helped. And we didn't work close to one another. In fact, I didn't work with the manager in the same office since I moved to the US at the end of 2010. So I always had, even if I worked in the office, I always had to build trust with a manager that didn't work next to me. So one of the things that I value the most is transparency. Be transparent as a manager to your team, and as an employee to your manager. If something doesn't work, share. If you're unsure of something, share. Don't be afraid of sharing things that you're not sure of. With that manager that I told you about, a lot of times I shared an opinion. I mean, it took me some time until I felt comfortable sharing. And obviously you need to do it in a way that will be respectful, but I shared my opinion, which was not always common because I was a lot of times working with many men and I was the only woman. And that manager really appreciated that I was transparent. If I saw something that he was doing that I felt was wrong, I told him again in a respectful way what I thought, and asked him to consider different alternatives. And he really appreciated that. And when you are transparent, and also I try to be transparent with people who reported to me and share with them things, even if I'm not sure of something, I shared. I was not afraid to share, that I was uncertain of something. And people really appreciated that transparent, and it helped me build trust with my team and also with my managers. As I mentioned, sharing is important. And I've worked in companies where management or executive level didn't share information, and that made it very difficult for employees to trust that company and the leadership. Even if you're unsure, and we all know that we work in times that are difficult, for many companies financially, do whatever you can to share what you can share with your team. Even if you're, again, even if it's very limited, even if you're just telling them, listen, I mean, we have at times of uncertainty and we're not sure, be open, transparent, and share what you can. People will appreciate that. And if you hide things from your team, that will eventually hinder you, and people will not trust you as a leader. Caring obviously goes hand in hand, care for people, and I talked about that. Care for the individuals, for their wants and need. I always believe that as a manager, you need to treat each person differently based on them and what is needed for them. And when you care for people, they see that and they are more motivated. And the other things that I feel like are very important when you work, especially when you work remote or hybrid, is always matching expectations and providing feedback. The challenge is that when you don't meet people in the office, a lot of times, you make a lot of assumptions, they make a lot of assumptions, you communicate over Slack or another, or Teams or what have you, and then there is a communication breakage. So the more you are able to share what you expect, the better. Make sure to always share expectations in the way that will make it as clear as possible, and provide feedback always on time. Personalize. As I said, different people, you should not treat everyone the same. And if you want to foster an environment that is inclusive and makes everyone feel like they belong, you need to treat every person differently. I'll give you an example, even from about 20 years ago, when I managed people and I had people who wanted more attention from me. So I met with them more frequently, and some people needed less attention. You always need to personalize how you work with people based on what they need in order to grow and succeed and feel they belong. And take into account that building trust may take some time. It's not something happening overnight, especially if you're like me, starting to manage a team of people who don't know you. It may take some time to do that, to build trust. And going to flexibility, as I mentioned, remote work changed my life completely. Be flexible. And I don't just mean flexible when working in the office or outside the office. I'm talking about even, which days you work, which hours. As a working mom, when I started working remote, it allowed me to pick up my kids from school, to be attentive to them. And the flexibility allows people to feel that you care to them, to feel like they actually work in a workplace that allow them to do what they need to do. I'll give you an example. I had an engineer that used to start very late, in the morning. And some people in my team were a little bit grumpy about that and always complaining, like, why this person never responds on Slack before 11 a.m. And I said, you know what? I'll talk to him and figure out what's going on. And I reached out to that engineer and I asked him, hey, what's going on? I mean, I usually noticed that when I try to reach you, you never respond before 11. I mean, I just wanted to ask you if everything is okay and what's going on and so forth. And he told me that for him, the most effective working hours are later in the day or early afternoon and towards late at night. And that was the most efficient hours for him. And when that was put out publicly for everyone, people understood that and eventually accommodated that. But even flexibility can go way, way beyond that. I had an individual that worked in my organization that was very young. He started actually working when he was still in high school. He is a brilliant, brilliant engineer. And he started his bachelor degree. And obviously it was very challenging for him to balance between a bachelor degree to a full-time position. So I allowed him to change working days and sometimes work over the weekend. So do whatever it takes. People really will appreciate that. And it will help people feel that they belong, that you actually care for them, and you allow them to do what is important for them in their life. And I feel like we are reaching, towards the end. So I'll allow people to ask questions because, sorry, I kind of swept away and was not able to say everything I wanted.
Oh, no, it's so fantastic. And Limor, it's so good to hear you thriving as a, Power to Fly alum and seeing you in your elements. So cool. We did have a couple of questions.
Yeah.
So we have just a couple minutes left. So someone asked, how do we empathize with our team and get them excited and not, in a cringy way? Like, how do we really rally people in a way that really gets them going and not like, hokey?
Yeah, that's a great question. It goes back, by the way, to building the trust and connecting with them as people. One of the strategies that I used was always to ask people's opinions, to connect with people, to make them feel they are part of the decision process, but not just make them, but actually I valued opinions, no matter how experienced they were. And that really created connection between the team. So involve them. Ask for their opinions. Even if you want to share something, share, but always ask for feedback. And that will make people feel that they are part of the decision.
That's fantastic. That's so great. We have 2 minutes left. Someone also asked, what are some ways to celebrate team success and milestones in a remote and or hybrid team environment?
Yeah, great question. You always have to celebrate small to big. And I've seen many ways to do that. It depends really on the company culture and on the individuals. As I said, you have to personalize. Some people would love it if it's announced company-wide or team-wide or organization-wide, so you can just celebrate by sending an email. Some people shy away. So sometimes you have to be sensitive to not putting people on the spot. You can celebrate in offsite, in meetings, maybe in a team meeting or company meeting, allow people to present maybe what they did. So there are different ways to do that, but you have to make sure that it aligns with the people and the company values, obviously.
Awesome. Well, Limor, we're out of time. It was such a pleasure to have you back. If folks want to keep the conversation going with you, what's the best way to stay connected?
Great question. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. Look for me, Limor Bergman, or just email me, limor.bergman@gmail.com. I'll be happy to connect. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.